Templeman, a philosophy professor and a member of Diversity Council at NIC, our event sponsor tonight. I'd like to thank you all for attending via Zoom, our new norm, at least for a little while. We usually fill up the Lake Coeur d'Alene room upstairs in the sub, and I look forward to going back to that as soon as possible. But this is a good interlude. Just a little bit of brief housekeeping. Thanks to Steve Smith, who's moderating tonight, and the local Coeur d'Alene Dharma Friends group, and to everyone at the Abbey, Sravasti Abbey, that helped me in organizing tonight. And for those of you who may have come on a little bit late, Venerable Children's request, you are encouraged to turn your video on so we can see your wonderful faces. After Venerable Children's talk, we'll have a Q&A where we'll take questions via the chat box. And I'd like to introduce our honored speaker by offering a brief biography. So Venerable Thupten Chodron is an author, teacher, and the founder and abbess of Sravasti Abbey, one of the first Tibetan Buddhist training monasteries for Western nuns and monks in the US. She graduated from UCLA and did graduate work in education at USC. Ordained as a Tibetan Buddhist nun in 1977, she has studied extensively with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. She received full ordination as a bhikshuni in 1986. Venerable Chodron teaches worldwide and is known for her warm, practical, and humorous explanations of how to apply Buddhist teachings in daily life. She's also involved in prison outreach and interfaith dialogue. She's published many books on Buddhist philosophy and meditation, and is currently co-authoring with His Holiness the Dalai Lama a multi-volume series of teachings on the Buddhist path, the Library of Wisdom and Compassion. The 5th volume, In Praise of Great Compassion, came out, I believe, just in August of this year. You can visit thuptenchodron.org for a media library of her teachings, and sravasti.org to learn more about Sravasti Abbey. And Venerable Chodron, I always look forward to hearing you speak and listening to you. So I thank you for speaking tonight. I'll clap for all the muted people, and I will turn the microphone over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura. It's always quite delightful for me to come and speak to NIC audiences. I'm used to a big room full of people, so we'll just kind of imagine that and be in that big room that happens to be a screen, you know, and share this evening. So I always like to begin just by quieting our mind for a minute so we can change directions from running around all day to doing something a little bit more serious, and then to cultivate our motivation. So, you know, just lower your eyes, put your hands in your lap, and breathing normally and naturally, just pay attention to your breath for a minute or two. If you get distracted, just notice that and come back home to your breath. And then let's set our intention for being here. and make it an intention of compassion for ourselves, for all other living beings, and an intention to increase our wisdom and increase our skills so that we can act in the world with compassion, with a balanced and peaceful mind, and make a positive contribution to the world and to all the living beings in it. So let's make that our intention for sharing the evening together. And then open your eyes and we'll begin the talk. So we have quite an exclusive audience here. It's everybody who is not listening to the debate. And yeah, I just watched it for like about 30 seconds a few minutes ago, and already it's too much. So I think the people that came to hear this talk are genuinely interested in the title of the talk, cooperation, okay, kindness. If we wanted to have fights and arguments and make accusations against people, then we would be listening to the debate. But we've heard that kind of talk already a lot, haven't we? We don't really need more of it. And we hear too much of it in our own lives, not just on the national screen. So this evening is a break for all of us to try and get in touch with our kind heart and see the world in a different view, in a different way. Instead of seeing the world as a hostile place where we are suspicious of others, cynical of what is going on, and basically only looking out for ourselves, you know, we're going to try and cultivate a different kind of attitude where we can look out for the welfare of others and try and create a better world. So, when I was thinking about what to say in the talk, what really came first to mind is something His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says, which is he talks about the ants and the bees, okay? And he says, if you look at the ants and you look at the bees, they are all cooperating within their own society. The bees all help each other. They know they have their different roles. They cooperate when, you know, and they make their honey together. The ants, yeah, definitely cooperate. And when you watch the ants, you know, walk around here and walk around there, then you can see how they communicate with each other and how that works to benefit the whole ant colony, or the way the bees work together to benefit the whole hive. And His Holiness often talks about that. And we have a few big ant hills on our property out here. And it's really true when you see them. I mean, how they work together, how they cooperate together. And as a result, there's a big anthill. And then you look at us human beings, and especially in America, we really emphasize individuality and individualism, being our own, unique person, and nobody's going to tell me what to do. We are Americans. We are the rugged people who go through difficulties and, look out for ourselves and our family and trash everybody else. They're not going to stomp on us. Okay. And that attitude, look what it's brought us to, as a nation. Look what it's brought us to. I mean, we're on the verge of, cracking up here. And that attitude, of rugged individualism doesn't really work when our lives depend on other living beings. And I think more than any other time in human history, our lives depend on each other right now. Okay. Now, I don't know about you. We have a small garden here at the Abbey, but it's not enough to feed all of us. So most of the food I eat, I don't grow. It is offered to us. My clothes, I don't make the fabric. Yeah, the cabin I live in, I didn't make it. Yeah. And after living 12 years in a cabin with no plumbing, I now live in a place with plumbing, but I don't know how to make the plumbing. I depend on other living, other people to do that. The electricity, all I know how to do is flick the switch. Other people made the electricity. The roads to get up here, yeah, I didn't make, other people made. We're talking together on a computer. How many living beings contributed to the computers that we are all talking to, using to talk to each other? Okay. Yeah, we didn't create all these things. We didn't create Zoom. Do you know anybody who made the components of your computer? Some of them were made abroad in many, many different countries. Similarly, for the vehicles we ride in, so many parts made in different parts of the world, put together, sold to us. We don't know the people who did that. And yet our very ability to stay alive and have just the four necessities of life, food, clothing, shelter, and medicine, just have those four, let alone the luxury of computers and cars and so on, we depend on other living beings. We haven't made all these things ourselves. And I don't know about you, but I don't even know how to. Okay? So if you put me on a desert island, I could teach you how to meditate, but I couldn't help you stay alive. I don't have any of those skills. So, we need each other very, very much nowadays. Even in, a couple of centuries ago, people lived in smaller communities. You could make your own clothes, you built your own house. Now, yeah, very few people can do that. So just this fact alone means we have to cooperate and we have to help each other. We cannot do it alone. And for Americans who are taught that I'm an individual and I'm going to do it alone, this is a big reality check. We can't do it alone. Okay. And functioning together as a country depends on everybody who lives in this country. And what we've really seen during the pandemic is how much we have often taken other living beings for granted and the work they do in society for granted. So much so that we're now facing the fact that some of the most essential workers, healthcare workers, people who work in grocery stores, gas stations, people who do a lot of just the general work that needs to be done, the people who collect the trash and clean the streets, who drive the buses, these people are more exposed to COVID They have a higher mortality rate, a higher illness rate. These people are the ones whose health insurance has been either taken away from them or threatens to be taken away from them. And yet these are the people who are doing the work that keeps the society going, yeah, while so many of us stayed at home and complained about being at home, you know? So here we are, you have the luxury of being at home. You can do everything that you haven't had a chance to do, that you've wanted to do for ages. And now you have the chance to do it because you're at home. And what do? We complain because we're at home. Do we want to go out and work in the jobs of some of those essential workers? No. Do we want to, work in a place where we're, very exposed? Do we care about the people who do those jobs and work in those areas? Maybe some of us do, but it seems like a lot of people don't care very much. And that attitude of not caring, not cooperating, is really what is, I think, ruining the country at this part. So much so, I mean, everybody's talking about how fractious we are and how people can't even talk to each other. And, I just remember when I was young, the Vietnam War was going on, and again, racial issues. And families, parents and kids couldn't talk. Yeah, parents were on one side for the Vietnam War, the rest of the kids were on the other side. And so this whole thing, it seems to be repeating now, and it really isn't getting us anywhere. Yeah. So we need to find a way where we can have different opinions and still respect each other. Yeah. So what is it that we have to look at in order to respect each other? And here, it's not people's political views. It's not people's wealth. It's not people's social status, because all of those things are very temporary. They're very fluid. They come and they go. But if we really look, what do we all share together as a country? And what do we share together as a world community? What each and every one of us wants is simply to be happy and not suffer. And that's the basic bottom line that we all share in common, don't we? Yeah. Doesn't matter what party they're voting for, who they're voting for, that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is we're all wanting to be happy and not suffer. And if we can, whenever we meet any living being, if we can look into their heart and see just that, then we can connect with them because we realize, hey, this person is exactly like me. They don't want to suffer. Maybe they have different things that cause them suffering than I have, but we don't want to suffer. They want to be happy. I want to be happy. We may have different ideas of how to be happy, but that basic wish is the same. And it's universal across all living beings, no matter our race, our nationality. In fact, it even pervades to all sentient beings, all beings with mind streams. So including the polar bears in the Arctic, including the multitude of stink bugs I have around my cabin right now, including, any living being, everybody, all the animals too, just want to be happy. They don't want to live in fear. They want to have security. And so do we. And so if we really train our mind in a deep way, so that whenever we see any living being, this is what we think about, then we can really actually feel a heart connection to everybody. Yeah. And at first you may think, oh, how can I feel a heart connection to somebody who votes for fill in the blank? Okay. But you can, if we really stop to listen. Okay. So the key here, I think, is listening. The key is not to have a debate. Okay. Because basically for the 30 seconds I listened before this, everybody was just repeating what we've all heard them say before. Yeah. What we don't need a debate. What we need is cooperation. And we need to understand each other. And understanding starts with learning to listen. Yeah. And of course, we all want to speak first, don't we? Yeah, because what I have to say is really important and they need to hear what I have to say because I'm right. But that doesn't necessarily mean we communicate with each other. Yeah, yelling at somebody, calling people names, lying, dividing people who are in harmony. That doesn't bring us together. That doesn't help us to understand each other. Okay, so the real thing is to learn to listen. And I've heard somebody said we have one mouth and two ears. And that means, that indicates what we're supposed to do more of. Okay, we're supposed to listen more than we talk. Because if we don't listen, and if we don't listen from the heart, then when we talk, we're also not talking from our heart. And the other person isn't going to listen to us from their heart either. They're going to be just like us, thinking of what to say in response instead of actually listening to what we say. Okay? And so the same goes with us. If instead of really listening, we're thinking of what we're going to say in response, then we aren't really picking up what they're saying. Okay, so I highly recommend to all of you to learn Nonviolent Communication, NVC by Marshall Rosenberg. Some of you may know it already. It's very, very helpful for getting us to slow down and learn to listen. Okay, and learn to really understand where somebody is coming from. So I think what is really key in listening, it's not just hearing, it is being able to repeat back to the other person in our own words what they said to us and what we think they are feeling. Okay? So usually somebody says something, then we come back either contradicting what they said because they're wrong and we're right, or, we add another opinion on top of that. And in situations of conflict, we need to learn to actually repeat back, not word for word, but in our own words, what somebody said. Yeah. Something to the effect of also including what we think they're feeling. Okay, so are you feeling afraid because many of the people at your office, at your workplace, have gotten ill with COVID? Okay, so saying something like that, instead of when the person's telling us, that their colleague or their relative got sick, instead of saying, oh, well, you know, if they had only worn a mask, then they wouldn't have gotten sick. And if they had only stayed at home, and if only we had a different president who put up different policies, or if only we had a different governor who put up different policies, you know, then they wouldn't have gotten sick. You know, how's that going to help anybody if we say that? You know, if we just say, are you feeling scared? You know, because somebody you care about is sick, the other person's going to go, yeah. And they're going to feel like we've understood them. And that is one of the most important things in communicating, is to respond in a way so that the other person feels understood. Because so often in conflicts, what people basically want is just to feel like they've been heard. They don't necessarily want us to solve their problems, but they just want to feel like somebody understands where they're at, what they're feeling, what their problem is. Okay? And this is important, and you see this a lot in couple relationships. Okay? One person in the couple starts talking about a problem that they've encountered, and the other one becomes Mr. or Ms. Fix-It. Okay? Now, do you know any people who are Mr. Fix-It or Ms. Fix-It? Yeah, I'm here. I will fix your problem. Just tell me your problem and I will tell you what to do. Yeah, but look at your own experience. When you have a problem, do you want somebody to come in and fix it for you? Or do you want somebody to understand you and hear you out? Yeah. So if we just look at our own experience, we know this is the same for everybody else. Okay, people just want to feel understood. Not contradicted, not corrected, not shown the one right way, but understood. Mm-hmm. And that, to really be able to show that to somebody, we have to slow down and really listen to what they're saying. And we also have to monitor our own mind. Because I don't know about you, but often in meetings, yeah, when we're discussing things in meetings, somebody will say something that I don't agree with. Okay, have you had that happen in meetings? Yeah, you're trying to work on a project. Somebody says something I don't agree with. And I feel like, whoa, I've got to interrupt right here and now and correct that idea, because if anybody takes that idea and runs with it, the whole world is going to collapse. That's the most awful idea, and the whole thing is going to be a mess, and I've got to interrupt and correct that person. Yeah. Do you ever feel that way, any of you? Yeah. Like I've got to correct it. Otherwise, what this person is saying is so terrible. Yeah, I can't let it stay in the atmosphere. What they said is so wrong and awful. But if we slow down and, you know, okay, we listen to what they say. And this is part of my practice, is in meetings to say to myself, children, you don't need to reply right now. Okay, you'll have your turn. Cool down, chill out, kid. And because often, if I interrupt to correct that other person's horrible, world-shattering idea, what I actually do is bring more attention to it and create an argument about it. Whereas if the person says something, very often, they've said it, nobody else in the room latches onto it, it's here and it goes. And if somebody in the room does latch onto it and wants to develop it, then at that time, a little bit later, I can contribute and share my ideas. Okay. But boy, I don't know about you in that situation. It is so hard. I want to like interrupt right now. I can't bear to wait 1 minute. It's like, chill out. Okay. So that's one thing, to really monitor our own reactions. Yeah. Why? And question our reactions. Why do I feel like I have to interrupt right now? Or I'm having a discussion with somebody over how to wash the dishes or some, something that we're always working on. And have you ever noticed with dishes, especially putting away the dishes, there's some people who put the cups upside down, and there's other people who put the cups right side up. You notice that? How many of you are upside down people when you put your cups away? How many of you are right side up people? You put the cup this way. Yeah. People are usually one or the other. Yeah. Now, why do the upside down people put the cup upside down? Yeah. So the dirt doesn't get into it when it's sitting in the cupboard. Why do the other people put it right side up in the cupboard? So that the rim of the glass doesn't touch the shelf, which could be dirty. So they're both doing what they're doing in order for cleanliness. And yet, if you are an upside down person living with a person who's a right side up person, oh my goodness, things can get pretty intense sometimes. Why did you put the cup away like that? So, of course, I'm using a very stupid example. But look at what happens in your life and what you quarrel with other people about. Yeah? Look at what we quarrel about. Sometimes the stupidest things. And then what happens was we start quarreling about one issue, okay? And then very quickly, the conflict turns to how we are talking to each other. Okay, so let me give you an example. I really like this example. Okay, so you're living with your housemate or your partner or your spouse or whoever, and you usually share different tasks. And it's breakfast time, and you like crunchy peanut butter for breakfast. And there's no crunchy peanut butter today. So you ask your spouse, oh, where's the crunchy peanut butter? Yeah, your partner, your spouse, the other person says, oh, I forgot to buy it. And we say, but you knew it was your turn to go shopping this week, and it was written on a list. What happened? Well, I don't know. I took the list with me, and I guess I didn't look closely. I didn't buy the peanut butter. Really? I don't believe that. I think you're making an excuse. Okay? So you see right here, the topic is going from the peanut butter to how we're communicating. Yeah? And I'm saying, you're making an excuse. The other person says, I'm not making an excuse. Why are you so sensitive about this? It's only peanut butter. I am not sensitive about this. You know I like peanut butter for breakfast. Why aren't you just paying attention and making sure it's here? What do you think I am? Your slave? that I've got to do everything you want. No, I don't think that, but I really wish you'd stop being passive aggressive. Okay, now we're starting to psychoanalyze the person. It's no longer about peanut butter. It's no longer about how they speak. We are psychoanalyzing their personality. Okay. Now, I am not a therapist, yeah, but who cares nowadays? We've all read enough self-help kind of books. We all know the terminology. We can just throw something out. If you're not passive aggressive, then you're bipolar, you know, or you're, what's the other one? I can't remember. But anyway, you know, we throw something out and accuse the other person of being that. You know, oh, you're doing your PTSD trip again, huh? And the other person is like, wait a minute. And, you know, I'm not suffering from PTSD. You are, and you're the one who's psychologically unbalanced because you're the one who's accusing me of doing things I never did. And, okay, do you see where we're going? And then finally it comes down to, you know, well, we've been together for how many years? And you always treat me like this. You don't respect me at all. Yeah, and why don't I respect you? Because look at the way you're acting. You're such a dimwit. Well, if you feel that way about me, I think we should separate. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll move out. Bye. Okay? So it started with the peanut butter. Where did it wind up? Okay? So we often start with one topic and then starts the accusations and us mind reading what we think is the other person's motivation for speaking or saying what they said. Okay? So I know that you're just making an excuse. Yeah, I really know that. I can read their mind. I know what their motivation was. No, I am imputing a motivation on them. Yeah, it would be better for me to ask. Okay. And then, of course, once we start psychoanalyzing them, I mean, nobody likes that. Yeah. And we're thoroughly unqualified to do that. And so again, you know, just we human beings, we're so amazing. We create so many of our own problems. All we want is happiness and not suffering. And we just go around creating problems for ourselves and for everybody else. Okay. What's the problem here? Yeah. It's what in Buddhism we call the self-centered thought. Okay. The thought that says, I am most important. Yes, there may be 7 billion human beings, over 7 billion human beings on this planet. But who's the most important one? Me. I'm the most important one. And if you know what's good for you, you better understand that. Because if you think you're the most important one, you are wrong. Okay? And so here you have 7 billion people all thinking like that. Are we going to get along? No, we're going to clobber each other. And who's happy at that point? Yeah, nobody's happy. Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, if you look, I don't know if the ants do this to each other or if the bees treat each other like that. You know, the dogs will bark at each other. The cats will hiss at each other. but they'll only do it when, there's some real danger, usually. Yeah. Whereas we, human beings, boy, just to make ourselves look good, we will say anything and everything. And to put somebody down so we feel more powerful, we don't care how they feel. And yet, if we don't care how other people feel, how are we ever going to have harmony? If we just go through our lives, and it's all about me, and my feelings are most important, your feelings are not. My ideas are always the right ideas. Okay? This is extremely important. Okay? Whatever I think is correct, because I would never, ever, ever think something that's not correct. So if today I think this, that is correct. If tomorrow I change my mind and think something else, that is correct. And so you better not disagree with me either yesterday or today, because whatever I think is correct. Okay, is that going to facilitate communication, cooperation? No. So we are usually pointing the finger at the other person. They are the ones who are so uncooperative. I had a friend who did, he was a mediator, and he used to do mediation workshops. So I went with him one time, and he did this little introductory exercise with the people. And then, asking them about how they behave in different conflict situations. And then he said, gee, it's so interesting. All the people who really want to cooperate and who are cooperative, these people are the ones who come to my seminars. And all the people that they disagree with, who are so uncooperative and so stubborn, they never come to my seminars. I wonder why. Okay. So what he was doing was clearly teasing everybody, because whenever there's a conflict, we always think we're the right ones, and the other people are the people who are uncooperative, who are lying, this and that. Okay. So, again, this is the kind of attitude we so often have with other living beings, and it makes us more unhappy, because when you really look at it, all of us want happiness. Yeah. And happiness comes when we can live together in harmony. When we accuse people of doing things, when we tell them that they're wrong and we're right, when we give them advice that they didn't ask for, we're not creating happiness with them. Okay? They're going to come away from us feeling like, oh, get me away from that person. This is too much. Okay? So it really, for us to slow down, to listen, to try and figure out what it is that is really the issue between us. Okay. I'll give you some more examples. These are examples I give all the time because, at least in my life, they're so crystal clear. Okay, any of you ever have problems with your parents? Yeah, especially when you were teenagers, and even now. Yeah, problems with your parents. Okay, so I had problems with my parents. And the problem was my parents were overprotective. And so when I was a teenager, I wanted to stay out with my friends. All of their parents gave them curfews that were usually an hour later or 2 hours later than my curfew. But I always had to be home by midnight. Because if I wasn't, my mother was a big worrier. And if I wasn't home, I knew she worried so much, she would call the police, hysterical. My daughter's been kidnapped. She's in a car accident. What's happened? She wasn't home by midnight. Ah. So I always had to make sure that I was home. And this was in the days of the dinosaurs, before there were hand phones. So there was no way I could call my mother to tell her I was safe. Okay. So, of course, we didn't get along about this. And she wanted me to be home, and I wanted to stay out later, because after all, I was 16 years old and I knew how to take care of myself. Okay. In fact, if you don't remember this from when you were 16, age 16 is the age when we are the closest to being an omniscient Buddha. Yeah? When you're 16, we know everything, don't we? Yeah? And our parents, stupid, so old-fashioned, so conservative. Yeah, they don't even know how to use a computer or a hand phone. We have to show them how to do everything. Yeah, what is it that people are saying now? Move over, boomers. What is it? Okay, boomers. Yeah, like get out of my way. You're just a baby boomer. You don't know anything. Okay? Well, that's what we baby boomers used to say to our parents. Because truly, our parents didn't know anything, you know. They thought the Vietnam War was great. Well, my parents were against it, but my friends' parents usually thought it was great. And we were like, no. So, okay. So we're quarreling. For me, the issue is what? What's my issue? What am I quarreling over? Okay. My autonomy. I want to be a free, independent person who can manage their own life and make sure they get themselves home safely. And at age 16, I am completely qualified to do that. For my parents, what did they think we were quarreling about? Yeah, they thought we were arguing about safety, because they thought, you know, that I didn't know what to do and how to handle emergencies and how to keep myself safe. And so they wanted me to be safe. They didn't want me to get hurt. So I thought we were fighting about autonomy, and they were infringing on my independence. They thought we were fighting about safety, and so they thought I was just being a dimwit and not caring about safety. So we were talking right past each other. Yeah. Neither one of us had an idea about what the issue was for the other person. And we never bothered to ask each other. I never asked my parents, what's the issue for you? You know? Well, why do you want me to be home so early? What's the issue? Yeah. And they never asked me. So we were really quarreling at cross purposes, making each other quite miserable. And I hate to admit this, but I did some pretty stupid things in my late teens and my 20s. that I didn't tell my parents about because I knew what they would say. And by the time I got to my 30s, I realized that my parents were actually getting smarter. It's really kind of amazing, you know, your parents who are so dumb when you're 16, they actually grow up. And, you know, by the time you're in your late 20s, your 30s, your parents, they've really learned something. They're so much more mature now. Yeah. Have you found that? So, you know, what all this is pointing to is really how we need to just try and listen and check if what we think we're hearing is actually what they're trying to convey to us. Okay, so let me think of another example. Nothing's coming offhand, but you know, somebody tells me their problem and I jump in and I, you know, they say, oh, I have this problem at work with my boss. Yeah, congratulations. Sometimes I feel we really need to have special days where we have compassion for our bosses. Because every country I go to where I teach, everybody complains about their boss. You would think that the bosses in the world are the most, you know, downtrodden people from the way others talk about them. Okay. But somebody comes to me, you know, they have some problem with their boss, and I don't empathize with them at all. I don't reframe their argument like, you know, to say something. Oh, well, you feel unappreciated because you worked very hard on the project, and the boss didn't seem to notice what your contribution was. Is that right? Is that how it looks to you? And the other person may go, yeah, you know, I worked my hardest, but when it came time, somebody else took the credit and my boss didn't appreciate me at all. And that was really hurtful to me because I put my heart into this project. Yeah. And then I could say, oh, wow, yeah, you know, it sounds like you were really acting sincerely and you put your energy into something that you cared about. And you would just like, you know, that if somebody noticed that, yeah, the other person goes, yeah, you know, it'd be nice if somebody noticed that what I did. Okay, so then the other person feels understood. Whereas if they, you know, tell me that same problem and I come in and you say, yeah, you know, you've told me so often about your boss and he sounds like a real jerk. You know, I think you should just go in there and go in his office and tell him that he doesn't appreciate any of the employees and that he's just, you know, ruining the work atmosphere here. Okay, so if I jump in on Miss Fix-It, I tell her what to go do, and I give that kind of advice. Is that going to be helpful? Yeah. If my friend goes in and starts talking to their boss the way I suggested that they do, is the boss going to listen? No, boss can tune them out and say, this is, you know, you can't talk to this person. They're so angry. So, you know, so often if we can just help somebody feel understood, yeah, then that's often what they need the most. And, you know, on top of that, if we can help somebody get to what the real issue is that's bothering them, then they very often can think of the solutions themselves. Yeah. Whereas if we think we can mind read and we know what the issue is and tell them how to fix it, it's not going to get anywhere. Okay. So that's the listening part. There's also the part we are responsible for of communicating properly. Okay. And so it's really best when we're communicating with somebody, what are we feeling? And, what are we needing? And when we say we feel something, don't attribute what you're feeling to what somebody else did or said. Yeah? Because if we come in and, we're not getting along with somebody and we start the conversation with, you made me so mad the other day when you told me that I was blah, 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 doing this and that, okay? So what am I doing at that point? You made me mad. Whose responsibility is my anger? It's yours. You're the bad guy because you made me mad. You did this. I have no responsibility for my anger. I am the innocent victim of all these horrible people that don't understand me and are exploiting me. Okay? So if I talk to you that way, that discussion's not going to go anywhere. Yeah. The other person is not the person who made me angry. My anger, the seed of my anger, exists in my own mind. Until I have conquered my own anger, I'm going to get angry, even when somebody's trying to be kind to me. If we switch this thing, have you ever done something that you thought was very kind to somebody and they got angry at you? Yeah. Have you ever volunteered to help somebody and they got angry at you for saying, let me help you? Yeah. So we do the same thing. Somebody often may be trying to help us and we are so prickly and our seed of anger in our mind is so close to sprouting that whatever the person says, we blame them and we explode. So, our anger is our responsibility. And if we find that our anger is interfering with relationships, yeah, and if it's really not getting us anywhere, then we have to work on our anger. Because one thing I have learned is that wherever you go, whatever you do, there's going to be somebody who doesn't like it and somebody who doesn't agree. And just because somebody doesn't like what I did or somebody doesn't agree with what I did, doesn't mean what I did is wrong or bad or incompetent or anything like that. It just means the person has another idea. Okay? So I have to get used to other people having different ideas than me. And I know that's, what an idea to have, that there's other people who have different ideas when my way of thinking is always the right way. It's just, oh my goodness, how can that be? These people are so stupid. Why don't they think like me? Okay? That attitude on our part creates conflict. Not what they're saying and doing, our attitude towards them. Yeah? Because we're the one who makes us into a victim. Yeah. Other people don't make us into a victim. We make ourselves into a victim. I know this is hard for some people to hear. Yeah. And I'm not saying that victims are responsible for the harm that has come to them. I am not blaming the victims. You know, when there's atrocities, when there's persecution and oppression and abuse, I am not saying that the victim or the recipient of all that caused it themselves or they're the bad person. What I'm saying is mentally, we put ourselves in the position of being powerless. Okay? We always have power. Just depends what kind of power and how we use it. Okay? But as soon as we start seeing the world as I am sweet, wonderful, innocent me who would never harm anybody, never do anything wrong for anybody. Well, once in a while, a little thing, but you know, I'm a good person, and the world is filled with all these horrible people who are always getting on my case. Yeah. If that is a mental attitude in my mind, yeah, is it the reality of the situation? That's a totally different question. Yeah. You know, often it's not the reality of the situation. I am looking at the situation through the lens of my feeling powerless, through the lens of I'm sweet, innocent me, and the world owes me something, and the world is treating me so awful. Okay? So really, don't get me mad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that people who are the victim of racism are, you know, are responsible for it, okay? I'm not saying that people who are oppressed around the world are responsible, or the people who are abused are responsible. What I'm saying is that we create an attitude towards life. We create an interpretation of what other people are doing. And when we make that interpretation one of, I can't trust the world because all these people are bad, because I'm poor innocent me that nobody understands. When we face any situation like that, we're going to feel left out, excluded, persecuted, and whatever. Yeah. Whereas if we have an attitude of compassion for others, compassion here meaning that we want them to be free of suffering. If we have an attitude of love for others, meaning we want them to have happiness, then when we approach any person or any group, we are relaxed. And we start out with an open field, giving everybody the benefit of the choice, or the benefit of, the benefit of the doubt. And then if some people act in ways we don't like, yeah, instead of getting angry, saying, wow, why is that person doing what they're doing? It's because they're unhappy and they're just trying to be happy. Yeah. And they're confused and they don't really understand what the causes of happiness are. Yeah. So if we can train our mind to see people like that, then we can understand why they say and do what they're doing. And we realize that we don't have to get annoyed or anxious or paranoid about what they're doing. We may still need to step up and say, this behavior is unacceptable. Okay, So I'm not saying we become the world's doormat. Yeah. But we don't have to get angry to stand up and say this behavior is unacceptable. Yeah. And let the person know kind of, that we understand their suffering, but, they need to find a different way to express what they're feeling. Okay. So this, developing love and compassion for others, it isn't some kind of gooey thing of, oh, I love everybody, until they look at us cross-eyed and then we can't stand them. So it's not that. It's really getting in touch in a heart level that they're just like us, wanting happiness, not suffering. Exactly like us. And if this person that seems so obnoxious to me, if they were really happy, they wouldn't be acting the way they're acting that I think is so despicable. Yeah, why are they acting that way? Because they're unhappy, because they're confused. Yeah, so I can have some compassion for them and at the same time deal with the situation straight on. It doesn't make me a doormat. Okay, so I think I've talked long enough, maybe too long. I think it's Q&A time, maybe.
So for Q&A, I can, there's a little bit of feedback. You can write your question in the chat room and I will ask it for you. Or if you want to ask your question yourself, just type that in there as well. And I'll call your name and Steve will unmute you for you to ask your question on your own. And if you're not Zoom friendly, at the very bottom of the screen, if you hover, if it's not already showing, you will see the chat box that you can open up. I forgot to give my tech seminar before we started.
And please feel free to ask anything you like.
Okay, so one question is, when did you join? I think this means when did you join Buddhism? And what was your life before that? When did you become a nun?
Okay, so a little bit about my life. I grew up in a middle-class community outside of Los Angeles. Very uneventful, but I had a very nice family. Of course, I didn't appreciate them at that time. But I was kind of a brat. But there was a lot going on in the world around me. There was the Vietnam War, there were race riots. The women's movement was just starting. So I was doing a lot of questioning of, what's the meaning of my life? And why am I alive and what's the meaning? So I checked out, what are the religions you can check out in an average American community? Different brands of Christianity, mostly. I was brought up Jewish. But, none of the theistic religions really spoke to me. I know they benefit other people and that's fine, but they didn't really satisfy my need. And I first encountered Buddhism. It's interesting because I traveled for a year and a half after I got out of school. I graduated from UCLA, and then I, worked for a year, and then I went traveling. And the place furthest most on our trip was the village of Tommy in the Himalayas. And there were some Buddhists there, and that's when I first kind of saw Buddhist things in Nepal. And as it wound up later, that was the village where my teacher was born. But of course, I didn't know my teacher at that time. Interesting coincidence. Anyway, I first encountered Buddhism. I was 24. I was working as a teacher in Los Angeles. And I saw a flyer in a bookstore about a meditation course. So I wasn't working in the summer, and I went to the course. And it really struck home. First of all, the whole approach that the teachers had, I really liked, because they said, you don't have to believe anything we say. You're intelligent people. You listen, you think about it. If it makes sense to you, great, use it. If it doesn't make sense, leave it aside. So I really like that idea, because I was very sick of people telling me the truth with a capital T. So I went and listened, and when they talked about the mind and how our mind works, how our heart works, what is it that is really the source of our problems? And it's not the other person, and it's not the government, and it's not, this thing and that thing. The real source of my problems is my own self-centeredness, my own, wrong way of apprehending myself, wrong way of apprehending other people. Then it really made me stop and think, and it gave me tools to really look at my mind and look at society around me, and to understand things in a much, much clearer way. Why do people do what they do? Why do I do what I do? What is it that's interfering with happiness? What is it that's causing happiness? And so I went to that first course. It was a meditation course for 2 weeks. I wound up staying the whole time, which was 3 weeks. And then I did a short retreat after that. And then I said, I really want to learn more about this. And if I don't learn more, I'm going to regret it when I die. So I quit my job and I went to Nepal. And I was, 25 when I got to Nepal. And then in the course of being there, I decided I wanted to ordain and become a nun. I asked my teacher, and he said yes, but he wanted me to wait. He made me wait about a year and a half, which was terrible because I wanted to ordain right away. But actually, it was very good what he said. It made a lot of sense, and it was for my own benefit. And so I waited. And then when I was 26, I ordained. And I lived, a large part of my early adult life abroad, either in Asia or in Europe. I never thought of coming back to the US, but I wound up coming back, and now live in the Northwest, where most of you live. Is that enough detail? I love talking about myself. So if you want me to talk more about myself, I will talk a long time. But I think you may have other questions too.
I am happy to ask a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds. In terms of specifically of politics, of how we are so incredibly divided right now. And along with what you said, how we're supposed to think that the other side just wants to be happy and free of suffering. When you bring that into real life and you're talking to somebody who's on the other side of the political divide, how do you, what's the best way to deal with that in the moment?
First of all, I don't try and change their opinion. Okay? If they have their political view, I mean, it doesn't work to come in and say, you know, what you're saying is all wrong and you're so stupid and that candidate is a jerk. That's not going to change anybody's mind. That just creates more hostility. Okay? So, what I think is better is to be what I'm curious about is, how does that person think? Why do they like that candidate? Why do they think that way? What is their vision for the country? Why do they think that is a good vision for the country? Okay. There's one book called Stranger in Their Own Land. I don't know if you've read it, or it's very good. It's about a professor, a sociology professor in Berkeley, who goes down to Louisiana because she really wants to understand why some of the people in the Bayou area there are so supportive of the oil industry, which is destroying their environment and sometimes destroying their homes. And she doesn't understand, she wants to really understand why the people think the oil industry is so wonderful and supported, and why they are against the EPA having more, environmental restrictions to clean up the environment. And so this is what interests me too. Like, why would somebody who's living there, who's being adversely affected by what the oil companies are doing, why do they think those companies are great? And so to me, it's like, how does the human mind work? How do people think that they come to that kind of conclusion? Okay. So this woman who went down there, she had a very open mind. She stayed there quite a while and she got to know people. And, of course, there were many, many different people there who supported the oil industry for different reasons. But one thing she found out was that almost everybody in that area was employed by the oil companies. So they loved the oil companies because the oil companies gave them their jobs. And they saw the EPA as interfering with the oil industry, which would adversely affect their having jobs. And for them, there were people who were not rich people, who were just trying to make a living, following in the tradition very often of what their parents did. And they just wanted a job and, to be left alone without all these restrictions. So, they always voted for the people who supported the corporations. And what about the pollution that they were experiencing? Well, many of the people were very, very religious, and they said, God will take care of it. Yeah. Or the companies, the oil companies, they'll clean it up. They told us they would clean it up. They'll clean it up. Even though their living experience is that the environment was getting worse. Yeah. But, for her and for me reading the book, it's like, wow, yeah. I mean, this is interesting how these people think. And they were also very anti-immigrant. And which, puzzles me, because most of the country, unless you are an indigenous person, we all come from immigrants, don't we? So what's the thing of turning against the immigrants if we're all immigrants? But what they felt very often, and I find this incredibly interesting. I mean, to me, people are very interesting. So I can talk to people on the other side of the political divide just because it's interesting to hear how they think. Anyway, you know, why did they, what was it? Huh? Yeah, why were they anti-immigrant? So it was because their ancestors were immigrants. They worked hard. They see the American dream way up here on the top of the mountain. They've been working hard, hard, hard. They're not even halfway up the mountain. And, you know, they're working so hard to get the American dream. And then these immigrants come in and the government gives them aid, and the immigrants cut the line and they get ahead of them, and they're closer to the American dream. You know, because the government is giving them handouts. Yeah. And I find that very interesting because to me, I look at it and the corporations are getting government handouts. Yeah. The government says it wants to cut out welfare, but the corporations are getting so much welfare. Who's getting the money, you know, in the COVID things? It's the big companies. And, you know, normally in so much of the business practice, it's the big companies. But here are these people who see the situation totally different. They trust the corporations. They don't trust the immigrants because they're going to cut in line and, you know, because they're getting, you know, food stamps. But the corporations getting millions, that's not a problem because the corporations are giving us our jobs. Okay. So don't you find that fascinating? I find that so interesting that people think like that. Of course, I'm assuming all of you think like me. Some of you are probably thinking like, oh, this nun, she doesn't understand anything, you know. The way these people are thinking is really right. Yeah, that's fair enough. That's okay. But you know, for the political divide, what use is there in arguing? Why don't we try and understand why people believe in what they believe? Yeah, we'll get much further if we really show genuine interest in somebody else instead of, you know, wanting to jump in and tell them they're wrong.
I actually have a question that's a private question that's related to that. If you think that a person has been influenced by conspiracy theories online, would you still speak to them that same way?
Whoa, somebody asked me this recently. Yeah. We have a friend who's actually an attorney, well-educated person, who thinks, we were discussing 9/11 one time, and he thinks that the plane, that it was all a hoax, that it was, people made those videos, or that it was actually the government who made the planes crash into the World Trade Center. And it's just astonishing to me that this person who I've known for, you know, many years would believe in something like that. Okay. Sorry if some of you believe in that, but you might. You know, how would I talk to that person? I would probably start out listening and trying to understand why they find that belief appealing to them. What is it in them that, what need is it in them that conspiracy theories satisfy? Okay, because I think sometimes what it is is it gives people, if you think there's a deep state and there's all these people working underground to do all this horrible stuff, it can give you a sense of you're in the know, you have power, so nobody's going to pull something over on you. So somebody who feels, like society is a scary place, if you know who the real enemy is and who to look out for, then that gives you some sense of, I have knowledge, so that will give me some ability to protect myself. Okay. Other people, may have those kind of beliefs because it brings another kind of security. I mean, people nowadays, I think security is a really big need that people have. And security is difficult to have because we're in a world that's always changing and always will change. And because that's the nature of life, is everything changes all the time. So I think the security theories appeal, it gives some sense of security or being in the know or having some power or knowing who to blame, because things are happening in the world you don't understand. But if these people are the evil ones, even though you don't know their names, or even their name is Q, or, it gives you some sense of, okay, now I know who to look out for. And it doesn't really provide, it doesn't truly provide that security. It often makes them very afraid. And I think this is why, especially in our part of the country, we get the people come, the open carry, and I want to bring my long rifle into town. I'm going to buy apples at the store, but I need to have my AK-47 with me when I go. It gives some sense of, when you feel helpless, when you feel insecure, then, oh, this gives me power. But if you really think clearly, what kind of power does it give you? Yeah, okay, it gives you the power to kill somebody, but then what? What happens to your life after you kill somebody? Okay, I do prison work. I know, I deal with people who are having to deal with what happens to their life after they kill somebody. Yeah. But, so I would try and listen, see, like I said, what is that person's need that is being satisfied by that conspiracy theory? And what are other ways that perhaps I can share with them about what I do to feel more secure or, and more safe in society? So instead of saying, you're wrong and these conspiracy wrongs, that's a bunch of hogwash and you're so stupid for believing it, that's not going to change their mind. Yeah. But if I say, this world is really confusing and sometimes I feel insecure in it. But I just remember that everybody at their heart wants happiness and doesn't want suffering. And that gives me a sense of being able to communicate with other people and feel safe around them. And then, maybe that person will hear that and they'll go home and they'll think about it. And maybe they won't. Okay, but maybe they will, and maybe it will help them. Okay, but I don't go and say, you feel really insecure in this world and that's why you're carrying your gun around. Yeah, that is not going to work.
So we're coming up to 8 o'clock, and you may want to end with just this last question. Do you have any recommendations or guidance for people interested in Buddhism?
Yeah, there's lots of resources. I mean, we're in COVID right now, but there's lots of online resources. I know at the Abbey, we have lots of stuff, audio, video, written work. There's a lot of Dharma books you can check out, things you can watch online. Most Dharma centers I know are closed because of COVID, but someday we'll be out of COVID and then go to a Dharma center. In the meantime, go online and see what there is available. Check out the qualities of a teacher very well. Don't just accept, just because somebody says they're a teacher, don't just accept that. Check out their qualities and learn. And so I think, Laura, you gave them our website and stuff like that. So, you're very welcome to start with that. And then NIC students, you live very close by, so come on up after COVID is over. Yeah, and really explore it. If you have a spiritual longing, explore that. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Don't get too busy in your life that you ignore those very deep questions about why am I alive and what is the purpose of my life and what kind of human being do I want to be. Don't get so busy with trying to make money and trying to be popular and trying to be on TikTok that you forget what is really important in your life. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if other people agree with you or not. If you are passionate about something and it's based on what you're passionate about, is based on ethical conduct, is based on love and compassion and respect for other living beings, yeah, then explore, follow it, see what you come up with. Yeah, don't live your life as an automaton, doing what you think everybody thinks you should do. That doesn't work.
That's a great way to end. And there's lots of thank yous in the chat box. And I would like to thank you for taking the time to speak with us, especially in this weird way on Zoom. I really appreciate it, and NIC really appreciates it. There's a lot of my students on here I saw.
Okay. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. And I wish you all well. Yeah, and maybe we will meet in person someday. That would be good.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.